Cannon Radio with your hosts, Jared Logan and Joe O'Brien.
Oh, here we are, back on our bullshit again.
You've come to the right place if you're looking for bullshit.
We're about to shovel it up and put it in your mouth. Hi, I'm Jared Logan, and with me is Joe O'Brien.
Yo, good buddy.
Cis, hetero, straight, white men just trying to make it in this world that's against us. So many
trying to make
blocks.
our voices heard out there.
Yeah, finally we have a voice. Listen, this is Glass Cannon Radio, and we're excited to bring it to you for a second time. Hopefully the show lasts 22 years and then ends. We have a show here where you can call in and have your opinion heard, and we love the Naish. We love the Glass Cannon fans. They are so smart and had so many funny, interesting comments last week, so we're happy to bring you back again. How do you do that? How do you call in and talk to us? You go to the Discord stage, the Glass Cannon Radio Discord stage, and you hop on there and you just raise your hand, and we will find you and we will talk to you. One thing that'll help is if you are in the Twitch chat, just write in the chat what you'd like to specifically talk about, like what your specific, maybe a little bit about what your opinion is or what issue you'd like to bring up, just so we kind of know what you're about to say when you're hopping on. You know, we don't want you to just let loose with a string of expletives and talk about your alien abduction. So be sure, in lieu of a producer taking calls, screening calls, please just throw that up on the Twitch. The other thing I want to say is, if you'd like to be involved in this discussion and really tell me off to my face, be nice to Joe, but you can tell me off, then go ahead and, you're not a subscriber. You need to go to jointhenaish.com, become a subscriber. You can do it in a couple easy steps right now, and then you could be on that Discord stage raising your hand, and you could be heard in this episode.
And you can do it for free, too. GCN30 is a code that lets you in for free to try it out. So come and check it out if you don't know how to talk on the show yet. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. But I mean, Discord is filling up. Lots of people hanging out, ready to talk. I can't wait for this episode. I can't wait to hear the Naish sound off on what we have to talk about today. And we've got a guest and stuff. Jared, please take it away. I'm very excited.
We're getting into a spicy topic today. Finally, this show is going to tackle the real issues. This show, by the way, is journalism, okay? It's not for fun. It's not to just chuckle with your friends, okay? We are weighing in on the debates of the day, and our word it has gravitas. So today's topics, we are first going to talk about the fact that the ENNIEs has decided to ban and disallow AI-created content from consideration for ENNIE Awards. ENNIE Awards being, of course, the gold standard of tabletop role-playing game awards that are held every year at Gen Con. This year, you can still have some AI content, some in your game or your publication, but starting in the next awards cycle, they will be disallowed. No AI. So we're going to talk a little bit about what you guys think of AI, what you guys think of AI being used in creative pursuits and works of creativity, and what do you think about the ENNIE's decision? And then we are going to get into this topic with our very, very special guest, someone who may have some opinions on technology and how it interacts with the hobby of tabletop role-playing. Foundry's founder, Andrew Clayton, will be on the show with us. The guy that created the Foundry, with a team of very helpful people, created the Foundry virtual tabletop. He's going to come on. He's going to talk a little bit about the AI thing, and then probably we'll get into some other issues related to technology and RPGs. And we're going to continue that discussion even after Andrew has to leave because he has to pick up his children from school because they are sick. And we told him, please wait to pick them up until the interview is over.
I love the idea of the school calling him, being like, you have a sick child, you have to come pick them up. He's like, I have a Glass Cannon radio interview. I'll get there when I get there.
Andrew may or may not have children. I have no idea. So so we'll talk about tech and tabletop a little bit more. We'll kind of like weigh in on all kinds of things. Anyway, that you can call in and tell us how you use technology in your tabletop games, in your role-playing games. Then after that, we have two really fun little things. First of all, we made Joe watch Blue Velvet as part of our month-long tribute.
This was from Caller.
Visionary director David Lynch.
This was from Caller Spice last week. Caller Spice last week said that Blue Velvet was required reading for David Lynch. And so I said, okay, Spice, game on. So we'll talk about that later.
Remember that last time Joe watched a David Lynch film, he walked away going, this man is the devil. So I don't know that Blue Velvet is going to change his mind. And then finally, at the very end, we're going to do something that probably we're going to bring back on the show occasionally. I am going to give a nerd rant, something that's really sticking in my craw right now. My craw is my asshole. I'm going to talk about a nerd issue that's really bothering me right now. And that's how we'll end out the show, on a really angry, negative note, which is how we like to leave you guys. So let's get right into it right now. Let's talk about the ENNIE Award. I'm not going to call it a controversy. I think this has been coming for a while. So I believe it was in 2023 the ENNIEs decided that AI-generated content was allowed in this capacity. If you were up for an art award, you couldn't have AI-generated art, but you might have AI language model generated text in your book, and vice versa. You know, if you were for a writing award, the art could be AI generated. And they said at the time that this was to allow for companies that maybe didn't have, like, you know, the buying power, the monetary resources of a Wizards of the Coast or a Paizo, so that people like that could still have their publication, their game considered. Even though they had to, you know, pinch pennies a little bit and use some AI. Now they're saying, starting in the next award cycle, absolutely no AI will be allowed at all. So if AI was used in any single step in the creation of your product, you are disallowed from the awards consideration. Joe O'Brien, thoughts on artificial intelligence?
I mean, just a massive, massive topic, and a topic that I think really bears
Try to zip it up
discussion.
in about a minute. Go ahead.
I know. It's like, how do you tackle something of this complicated nature, which not only is so far reaching in so many areas of life right now globally, but is also so, I don't want to say controversial. I mean, it's obviously controversial, but it's so polarizing and heated that even bringing it up seems to be a real problem. And I've always been really disappointed in situations like that where you can't discuss things, right? And I really love the idea of hearing today from callers their thoughts on this and really how it impacted tabletop creators, tabletop designers, writers, artists, and even these small individuals that are trying to start their companies. I would say in general, like, my initial reaction to the decision is a good one. I think it's a good decision. The primary reason I feel like it's a good decision is because I think while it might be tough, a hard decision to make for various reasons, I think that it is clear, very clear, and you have a line in the sand that is not ambiguous, and I like that. One downside that I fear may come up, and I'm curious if callers have any thoughts on this, is one of the reasons that the ENNIEs put this into place in 2023 was to foster an environment where the use of AI could be disclosed, where it wouldn't harm you necessarily to disclose that certain aspects of your work were generated by generative AI. Now I worry a little bit that we may be incentivizing hiding, secrecy, lying about AI in order to gain because if you win an ENNIE, you have an opportunity to be exposed to audiences you wouldn't otherwise be exposed to. You have an opportunity to grow your game in a way that you wouldn't otherwise. And I think the temptation is there. Yeah, so I think in regards to the Ennies, I think it's a good decision for the reasons that I laid out in terms of the clarity of it and the lack of ambiguity. I don't know. What did you think when you read the news?
Well, I think it's such a good point to say that now people will just try to hide it, that's
what I worry about. I do worry about that. I'm curious if other people worry about that.
And I don't know if there's a way, and maybe the callers know this, or someone can tell us if there's an easy way to detect it. I will say that I agree with it on a artistic level, because if AI made it, you didn't really make it. Like if you were the guy in the 1700s that told the painter, "Hey, I want to paint a painting of a field of sunflowers," and the painter went and did that, the painter really did that. You just sort of like gave them an instruction. So using AI means you didn't really create it, and these are awards for stellar works of art that you created. So I agree with it on an artistic level, and I also feel that a lot of AI art or even AI text is very flat and very samey, and the thing that makes a great game or a great novel or a great movie or a great whatever is the places where it breaks the rules or is sort of idiosyncratic or a little fuzzy and weird or different from other things. And if we're looking at a future where we create things with AI, we're not going to get that, because it's going to keep sourcing its lowest common denominator. It draws from all these different sources to create a very flat, median thing. So I'm not for that.
I agree. My gut is also, and also I should say up front that I'm, contrary to what Jared said earlier in the show, I am not a journalist. So my opinion on this is, to be fully informed about every angle of this, I believe to be near impossible. And so I'm not speaking as someone that knows a great deal about the industry, knows a great deal about even using AI. I've never used AI tools. Honestly, I don't really know how to use them. So I'm curious as to how that develops, because you read about the light touch ways that AI are used, right? Not creatively to whether it's spell checking or generating layouts or PDFs or whatever, how this decision kind of impacts that as well. Is it only generative AI? Is it any AI tools? Again, can't wait to kick it to the callers and hear everybody kind of weigh in about how this impacts everything. But one thing I will say is that I feel like in a lot of these situations, you end up getting in a position to decide between something that is better and cheaper versus something that is more expensive and not as good. And in this case, it's just so, to me at this stage, so obvious that, to what you said, it's not as good. It just can't be as good as human creativity, human art, illustration, story generation,
I'd rather
interaction.
see bad chicken scratch human art than see that shiny, fully painted, sort of textured AI art. I would really rather see someone draw stick figures in their game, because that's unique. That has character, and you can always tell it came from someone's hand. I will say, I do worry that AI is sort of a Pandora's box that has opened. And traditionally, it's very hard to prevent people from using a technology historically. Once a technology is out there, governments, rule creating bodies have a very hard time of going, stop using that technology. So
that's one of the reasons I think that we really wanted to have it on the show here. Want to bring up people to talk about.
Let's talk to people
how the decision, what they feel about the decision, but also maybe how they use AI in their life in one way or another, or if they don't or they refuse to. I'm curious to have an open conversation about this. I really do not wish this to turn into a yelling match for one side or another. I really want to try to have. You love yelling. You're such a huge yelling fan.
Who's pro AI? Get on here right now. Do you think we really have a lot of pro AI people?
No, I don't. But I also just want to make sure. I mean, I think that that one side of this, particularly as it relates to tabletop role-playing games, is so abundantly obvious. But that's just my mind. I don't think the way other people think.
Right.
And I think it's important to try to listen to the way other people think. Yeah. The way that I approach these problems is, it's very hard for me to go onto a Reddit post about AI in gaming, for example, and just read vitriol from people that are enraged that people even consider AI as acceptable in any way, shape, or form without listening to what people are saying. And that has nothing to do with anything, but I feel like the way my brain works. I always am curious to know, well, what possible argument do you actually have on the other side? And I want to give them time to flesh it out. I want to hear it and make a decision, It's
horrible that you went to the internet and you weren't able to hear a balanced discussion of an issue.
That is that's what
the internet is for.
If I'm honest, that's what my dream is for this show. That's what I want this to be, that kind of platform where people can come freely and speak their mind.
Bad news, Joe. I don't think like everyone either. Some people are wrong.
Yes.
Let's bring up the first sacrificial victim.
All right, let's bring up somebody to the stage here. Let's go with Marco.
Marco, hello.
Marco, can you hear us? Oh, hey, Marco.
Coming through loud and clear, Marco. What did you want to say about AI, tabletop role-playing games, and maybe the ENNIEs?
Well, I mean, largely I agree with what you were saying about the output of this thing isn't particularly creative, and TTRPGs are, it's all about being creative. It's all about having fun and telling stories, and these things, although they appear at first to be able to do that, when you actually use them a bit, they're not creative. They're just bland, as you say. I think that was a good word. But the other thing is, ethically, they're all built on stolen material. And until that is a problem that is solved, and it's a difficult one to solve, I find it hard to see how it can be used, how you can award things. So I think it's the correct decision not to.
Yeah. Thank you, Marco. That is a great point. Good call to start us off. We didn't even mention the ethics. Ethics is a massive issue here, and it really does. Marco brings up a good point. It's like you said, how do you close the Pandora's box? Marco says, how do you make it not based on stolen material, right? Like how? I don't understand how it would work without sourcing all of this stuff that was, stolen.
No, it really is. It steals a little piece of 1,000 different things, right? And that's how it creates its image or its text. Yeah, is that stealing? Is it stealing if I take a penny from each person? I mean, I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to take the devil's advocate here.
Yeah, my devil's advocate to that argument is just, and I'd love for somebody to come up and argue this with me. I just love to hear the other side. Is like, where do you draw the line, right, between inspiration and plagiarism? And I think sometimes it's very clear, but other times it's like, look, I mean, there's no some of the characters that I have made on the Glass Cannon Network have been inspired by a great character from a novel or a great minor character from a TV show and the source is there and somebody else created that, but I had a different thought about it or a spin on it. Is that theft? I'm curious. I don't know.
Joe, I'm a professional stand-up comedian with multiple TV appearances under my belt. Just like to throw that out there. And sometimes someone will go, hey, that guy has a similar bit that he's doing your bit. And then I'll watch him do the bit, this other comedian, and it's really just the same topic. It's not even the same joke, Or like, sometimes I'll do a bit and some other comedian will run up to me, some fucking hack, and they'll say, hey, I do that bit. And you know what I always say? It's yours. Because if we're both doing it, I don't want to do it. And I have more ideas, I don't need every little thing to be so precious. How does that apply to AI, Joe? It's not important. Let's bring up our next caller.
let's take another caller. Let's see. Let's get Clorpdunk. Clorpdunk, who great Twitch supporter of ours, always in chat, raised their hand. Clorp, can you hear us?
Yep.
Oh, hey, yeah, we got you. What's going on?
All right, so I'm no longer anonymous. You've now heard my voice.
Yes.
I was thinking about...
You've come out of the shadows.
Yeah, keeping the Clorp P. Donk character in the shadows. Well, I'm an art teacher.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Wow, okay.
And
do you allow your students to use AI?
We debate it. We talk about it. I guess my the people over me have given license for us to do as we want with our own classes, so it's not like banned from the top down. Well, I'm not sure about like writing papers and that sort of thing. I'd have to go dig into emails they've sent about that, but it's pretty fascinating. Every semester, you know, I talk about it with each person, and things that have already been said about the concept of taking from other artists is something to consider. But and so I don't know how it could ever be considered ethical. But
I agree with you, Clor. I didn't know it was. I never knew it was Clor P. Dunk until today.
No. That's just like that's what Jared called me last time, and so it's
okay. Okay, great, right. Yeah. Clor P. Dunk. I forgot. Yeah. So
Clor.
Yeah, I agree with you about the.
I'm sorry, Joe. I was just going to say to Clor, if a child in my art class got online and managed to make an AI-generated work of art, I might be a little impressed and go ahead and give them at least a C.
Well, let me ask you, Clor, what if you're discussing
I mean, it's Clor Dunk. It's not Clor.
Yeah, so Clor.
I know, but I'm saying Clor as a bit.
It's a bit. It's a bit. If you're in front of this class and you're having this discussion, having this debate, what form does the debate take where the art student says, I want to use AI to supplement my art, and that's acceptable? Like, how is that argument put forth, if my question makes sense?
Right. Well, I don't know that I've really had anybody ever say that they feel great about the concept, to be honest.
Good.
Just because, you know, it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg thing, in that this artificial intelligence would not exist without that human intelligence to first create it and then create that library of images wherein, you know, the AI could come in and start taking like your pennies, right? So,
yeah, I mean, it is a good point, and thank you for coming up, Clorp, coming out of the shadows to talk to us. Great to hear from an art teacher. I think that's really cool. I'm glad it's being, you know, discussed, but it's hard to imagine, you know. So I came out of the voiceover industry at the end of my career. At that time in the voiceover industry, representing talent really is when the rise started to happen of AI voices you could not tell the difference of. That was terrifying. It's awful. And it really does put a deep fear into performers, and as it should, and us as agents who represent them. And I just can't even imagine what that must be like for artists, for illustrators, writers. It's got to be just so terrifying and awful.
This is what I'm saying. You know, I've worked as a TV writer, and a lot of people are out of work right now, and some of that's because of mini rooms where they hire less writers. But also, you know, the Writers Guild went to war over AI, and you know, they said that they got concessions from the studios. But again, I worry that it's like Pandora's box. Like, yeah, you know, this year the studios promised XYZ, but I don't know. And the other thing that's crazy to me is it feels like, you know, so far the two people we've talked to, but I mean, I bet everyone we talk to today is going to be like on some level anti-AI, and it feels like the powers that be are still going to, pardon the phrase, ram it down our throats. Sorry, that's kind of gross. Ram it up our asshole. Like,
yeah, it doesn't feel like you have a choice. I was very weirded out when Gemini came into my Gmail and Google Suite experience just recently. It felt like recently, right? It's just been the last few weeks where it's like now it's in everything. It's in every search bar. It summarizes my emails without me wanting it to. And I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah. And it really is weird that they decide to give you no choice on that. Let's get another caller here. And we only have a couple minutes before we talk to Andrew Clayton from Foundry VTT about this. Very much looking forward to hear Andrew weigh in on this. But let's get McKenna to the stage. McKenna, I dig your profile picture, man. McKenna's got a little Lebowski John going on. I tried to invite, but if it didn't work,
the dude abides.
The dude abides. All right, that didn't seem to work. So let's. Oh no, there it is, McKenna.
Hey, sorry, I'm at my bar right now working, and I just took a beer delivery. Anyways, here's what I have to say. Here's what I have to say about AI is that there are a few things that get overlooked with this. I think in terms of like the art and the people who are doing the creative stuff that they put out into the world, it's a little bit shady. But AI is a great tool for people like me who are not very smart that need to make filler content.
For
what is
your
filler
games?
content? For your home game or for your bar or what?
For my home game, for my bar, I can't use AI. I'm pouring people pints, but for
I don't know. Maybe you own it. Maybe it would be marketing materials, McKenna.
That's true. Oh, are we yelling now?
I'm
like
not
this.
your mother. I don't know your life.
You know what? You might be my father, though. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I am
Why
yelling
don't
at
you own the bar, McKenna? You're not working hard enough.
So you like to create material for your home games using AI generator things?
I don't like to, but sometimes. I mean, I work a lot at my job, and I run a game, and we play for like 8 hours every other week, and sometimes it's just easy to like, okay, I know that there's a possibility that there's going to be an interaction with an NPC or not. And sometimes it's nice to just have like pop in a prompt, make a thing happen. That way I can use it as reference material instead of preparing for every situation, because we all know how often that.
Well, let me say two things, McKenna. One is a statement. The other is a question. The statement is, everybody knows that having a job and other things to do is no excuse for not prepping your role-playing game for 27 hours a week. A role-playing game, GMing is a part-time job, and if it's not taking over your life, you're not playing Pathfinder Remastered Adventure Paths. That said, what kind of prompts are you putting in? Like, how are you using AI to create a NPC so I can do that?
So teach Jared how to shortcut his prep.
No. I mean, a good for instance is I'm running Strength of Thousands. I am using a Pathfinder 2e adventure path, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, so it is a part-time job. Okay,
yeah,
it is. Yes, but so an NPC. And because of the shenanigans of the players that I have, I can write in, okay, Joe Schmo is angry because you betrayed his trust, and now he's finding a way to do that. And like it can just create something that I don't have to think about. I do a lot of like improv, but sometimes it's nice to have a few things out there that I can improv off of when in the grand scheme of the world of like where we're playing in, there's like a billion different options, and my party is want to just go in every single direction. So sometimes I'll just make those, and honestly, like 98% of those I never use.
Yeah,
but it's nice for a dummy like me.
Yeah. I hear you. And in fact, thank you, McKenna, for calling in. We're going to get to Andrew Clayton here in 1 second. I just want to say, to bring it up for discussion, we're going to talk to Andrew here for a bit. And once Andrew is done, we're going to get back to callers. And I'd love for people to talk about how they use this tool in their home games, if they do or not. And if so, I guess I'm also interested in the overall topic of, are there ethical issues in private use, or is the ethical issues only coming up in commercial use, when you're selling things? Is that when it crosses over a line? Or should you never be using any of these tools, due to carbon footprints and energy usage and stuff like that? I'm curious to see kind of where people stand on that. Jared, something else before we get into Andrew
I
in?
can think of one ethical issue for private use, and it's not so much ethical as I would just say, and again, this is no criticism of McKenna or anybody who uses these things. I have used them, honestly, in role-playing games, but private home role-playing games. But I feel like, part of what's cool about GMing is you're working a skill, you're working certain muscles, you're getting better. It is an art form, and you are learning to perfect that art form every time you do it. And when we just sort of like go, okay, computer, give me 15 ideas, we are sort of selling ourselves short. Like we aren't improving ourselves as GMs. That is that's a little bit of a devil's advocate to people who are like, well, it's okay to use it at home.
Yeah, I hear you. Oh man, I could get into that too for a little bit, but we're going to cut off right now and talk to our friend Andrew Clayton from Foundry VTT, friend of the show and GM of our Ember series, creator of Ember, creator of this amazing tabletop, who obviously does a lot of work in this field. Andrew, welcome to the show, buddy. How you doing?
Hey, folks. Hey, Joe.
Up?
Hey, Jared. How are you?
The founder of Foundry. Andrew, do you have any children?
I do. Yes. I'm so blessed.
They need you to pick them up as soon as you're done here.
This is a joke that came up earlier. And we said that you were coming on the show regardless of your children's needs because you're so committed to Glass
they're
Cannon
secondary
Radio.
To GCN radio for sure.
Yes.
Well, thanks for coming on,
Good
Andrew.
answer.
I really appreciate you taking the time. We saw the article come out about the ENNIE's decision, reversing a decision from 2023. And my first thought was, this is something that I'd be interested to talk to Andrew about and get your thoughts on it. So let's just start there. What were your thoughts when maybe back in 2023, when the ENNIE's first made the decision to allow awards for only human creativity, but possibly in products that contained generative AI, versus removing consideration at all for any product that uses generative AI in any aspect of it?
Well, I think that it was unlikely at the time that any sort of policy would be indefinite. I think this is such a rapidly evolving space that every company is kind of constantly assessing and reassessing what their stance is, whether they're as a creator debating, is this technology that we want to use, whether it's as a platform, is this technology that we want to give surface space to. I think that the landscape is changing, and the community's understanding and kind of the perception of the issues, it's an evolving thing. I think that, to be honest, I think the ENNIE's probably made this statement because they were feeling some pressure from people to take a stronger stance. I mean, they said as much in their statement. Mm-hmm. I think it's a little bit hard for me to imagine how that is going to work for them in terms of enforcement. Either way, they're relying on self-declaration of what is your product and how is it made. I'm not saying that people will lie. Some people will lie. But I'm also saying, like, some people might not necessarily have the same view of, is my project generative in some way, where someone will say yes, someone will say no. I mean, anyone who's doing layout for a print book and has encountered the need to, like, I've got to account for this bleed area, so this image asset has to stretch just like 20 more pixels. Photoshop, generative fill, place this asset on my book page. Oh, you just use generative AI. Your book is now ineligible for any consideration.
Where do you draw the line? Like, what is,
And who's going to call that out, right?
Yeah.
So that publisher that used generative AI to account for bleed margins when laying out their product, are they going to decline to self-nominate for the ENNIE's? Because let's be honest, that's how it works usually. Or are they going to say, that's so minor, like who cares? Or there's publishers that don't know. There's publishers that don't know that their artists used generative AI, or there's publishers that don't know that their writers used ChatGPT prompts to help brainstorm ideas. and ultimately someone's got to enforce it too. So like when a submission comes into the ENNIEs, are they going to, be the Inquisition? Are they going to go through and hand check every product and try and see if they can spot an extra finger somewhere? I don't know. It's tough. And that gets the wrong answer sometimes. Like we, during the Ember Kickstarter, we had several people come in hot against us, accusing us of having AI generated artwork, which we absolutely don't on that project. We have a very firm no AI policy on that project, but someone sees a piece of artwork and, there is kind of a hair trigger response. Everyone's like on the lookout and trying to, push back against that sort of thing. And so who's going to be the judge of that? I don't know.
That's a great point. It's not just people hiding maybe their use, but people accusing others of using it without actually knowing or having proof. And one other thing I wanted to say is I think it would be amazing, because you mentioned an extra finger, if a tabletop RPG product won an award and then someone noticed an extra finger.
Yeah, what then? Yeah.
What a controversy that would be.
Yeah.
But no, that's a good point, that people are going to start accusing each other of this.
Well, not just they're going to start. I mean, this already happens. This already happens actively, not just for our project, but I think there are people who are actively looking at new things coming out and seeing if there is a scandal in the making, any sort of problematic content, whether it's AI or otherwise. And I'm not saying that shouldn't happen. I think it is the tabletop RPG community's responsibility to self-enforce the mores, the norms, the social norms that we want and that we find acceptable, and the behaviors that we want to encourage and the behaviors that we want to crush. That's what a community does. And so I'm not saying that shouldn't happen, but who at the ENNIEs is going to be doing that, I don't know.
Yeah, and I'd say, although we do want to sort of, to some extent, police each other, maybe, or creatives that work in this field should do that. I don't know. It adds to the general clamor of nobody knowing what's real. When, people aren't revealing that they're using this, other people are accusing them of using this, or accuse is maybe a strong word, but saying, I think, anyway, what is real? We're all living in a simulation. And I don't even know if I'm really here right now. That's sort of how life feels right now, and I hate it. Was that a good comment for this discussion, Joe?
I think you're getting into your own shit a little bit too much.
Just getting into my own shit.
Andrew, you are in the midst of developing a mind-blowingly enormous product. And product to me is it's a word that it feels inappropriate. It makes it feel like it's just a thing. It's an experience. It is a massive. For those that don't know, Andrew is developing, along with a large team, Ember, the first real virtual tabletop campaign built for virtual tabletops, with an amazing amount of content to explore. Jared, you and I have a great time in Quest for the Frozen Flame doing our Hexploration. That's sort of one of the bases of this Ember adventure, and it is, Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if it's grown since we've talked, but at least 25,000 hexes that are populated with stuff. 25,000 that your players can explore, and that you as the GM have all of this information that comes right to your face to work with. To me, I feel like you are not cutting the GM out of this. Was there ever a point at which you ever thought about, even if it's not really AI tools, where you thought that the system could automate itself to run this game? Or in your mind, was it always a human GM oriented project?
For this project, the goal was always to have a human GM in the driver's seat, because that's the kind of collaborative storytelling experience that we want to create. We want to kind of have aspects of Ember that stay really true to the kind of traditional TTRPG roots. Even though it is a very digital first experience, we want to stay authentic to that, interpersonal experience of the storytelling. But There are definitely facets of Ember that are, at the boundary of like moving away from a traditional experience. And there are places in Ember where, automated decision making occurs around, what narrative event happens when you move from one hex to another based on a huge number of factors that affect the probabilities of different events occurring. The time of day, the calendar, the weather, other events that have happened, things that you've done in the past, where you are in the world, where other people are in the world. All these things weigh into what event happens. Now, in our game, that's a probabilistic model, so it's not a generative AI tool, but it could be. It could have been a neural network or an AI model that would be doing that. It's maybe a different than content generation, but there are tools that rely on that sort of AI to create content. There's great tools, game assist tools in the TTRPG space for content generation, like random dungeon generation or dungeon creation. There's tools that use AI models to place assets in rooms and design dungeon layouts, and you can randomize your dungeons and get all these different things. Like, are those tools evil because they use certain types of models? No, certainly not. But those types of model usages are not directly disenfranchising other creators in the industry who are working hard to create artwork or write prose upon which certain LLMs or other image, generative models are trained. So it's a very complicated space in terms of not all AI models are equal, not all uses of AI models are equal, but that's not a kind of nuance you can ever distill down to a policy statement, for your platform or for your awards show.
Is it better, do you think, I'm sorry, Joe, maybe you have that they just made a blanket decision, just like, hey, AI, nothing. Like, if you get an AI, you can't get an award. I mean, is that what they had to do, given how complex it is? Or is that decision really missing the complexity of the issue?
Yes. No, I think I can see the argument that it's something they had to do because, explaining the criterion or the nuance of like, this is okay and this is not okay. It's inviting a kind of disagreement or discourse that I'm sure can't work with. I mean, that's not going to be feasible for them.
Yeah.
Having clarity around what the rules are is probably the most important thing. And while that maybe leaves some people shut out that I think might, based on the work they've done, be deserving of an ENNIE, there is an abundance of work in the TTRPG sphere that is deserving of an ENNIE that has not gotten an ENNIE or not gotten an ENNIE nomination in the first place. So like, deserving is probably not even really part of it with that particular
We haven't even
award.
asked a bigger question. Do we care about the ENNIEs? Okay, sorry, Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, honestly, I'm glad you said that, Andrew, because to me, the ENNIE's place here in this conversation is just a Kickstarter. It's a fire starter. It's
right.
It's just like to get a really larger discussion going here, which is, how should AI tools be used at all in the TTRPG space? Separating generative AI from different AI tools that are not generative. And, what I cross over into listening to you and your approach to it is, I kind of start to feel old in these arguments, right? In these discussions, because I'm very uninformed about it. And I think that it is insane to think that an AI could DM a game. I think that it's preposterous at the level that a human can, especially one that's been doing it for a while. Just a general question to you. Do you feel that way at all? You're much more involved in the tech space than I am. Do you see in a few years from now, 10 years from now, that there will be AI GMs everywhere? That like AI GMs will be way more prevalent than they are now, and perhaps really beating out human GMs to run games, that players will choose to play with an AI so that somebody doesn't have to do the prep. Do you see that as a future in gaming, leaving the business and commercial end out of it?
I do see it as a future, although I don't see it as maybe as ubiquitous as what you proposed it might be. I think that there's a lot of people that like the idea of TTRPGs. They like the experience, the adventure, the storytelling, the character development, but there's a lot of people in our industry and in our community that actually aren't really all that comfortable with the interpersonal side of it. And I think that's not maybe the people that are on podcasts and on shows and, in the public zeitgeist, but there's a lot of people that love the idea of solo games, or there's a lot of people that love the idea of, scheduling just sucks for me. I can never work it out. I never get to play D&D. I mean, and I think that if there's an option for someone to play through a really fun adventure solo, guided by a piece of software, I think a lot of people would enjoy that. And I think a lot of people will enjoy that. But it's not going to be the same experience. It's not one for one. It's not saying this is the same game or the same type of game as what you have when you're 5 people gathered around a physical table or 5 people gathered around a virtual screen on webcams. All of those are different experiences in different ways. And I think that as the technology improves, I think AI GMs would be able to tell great stories. I don't think they'll be able to necessarily read the room and the emotions, the interplay between party members to pick up on those subtle plot lines that
and a lot of GMs can't do that either, but good point. Yeah.
Sure. Yes, but also not just this plot, not just the story. Also, like you said, reading the room, knowing when a player needs a win, right? Like a person. Yeah. Just they can't take it right now. You need to ease off. That's an interesting concept. Let me bring a question here from chat, which is very basic, very straight up. Few people have asked this, but A-Dubs just says, aren't AI GMs just video games?
Yeah,
I don't necessarily agree. What do you think? Or I don't necessarily think the answer is yes. What do you think, Andrew? Do you think that is the distinction? A human GM makes it a TTRPG, a AI GM makes it a video game RPG. Is that a fair statement?
It's fair adjacent, but I think that video game experiences often are ones where the creator of the game has decided what the story is. And the creator of the game has made assets and visuals and artwork and scripted events and animation, all to tell their story and to tell their story in a way that you can experience. I think a traditional tabletop role-playing game is one where it's the player's story and the GM is just there to help tell it. And I think that is a little bit different because the narrative choices that you're making as a GM they may be partially self-serving because you're prepared for certain things or not, or you have a certain direction that you foresee or want the story to go in. But ultimately, like the prompt, response, reaction kind of framework of these collaborative storytelling experiences is one that it's not like, I'm going to ignore what you did. Like, oh, that door is locked. You can't go through that door. I break the door down. You can't break the door down. That's a locked door. It's not that kind of thing. The GM has a lot more flexibility to change the world or change the story in response to what the players do than I think what most people would think of as a video game would do. That said, if we're looking at the 5 or 10 year horizon, I'm sure there's going to be video games that are very heavily invested in sort of procedurally or otherwise generated content where, the game reacts to the player's choices more than is typical, even for like a, BioWare or CDPR or whatever game that's using, Larian game that's using very sophisticated dialogue trees, but ultimately those dialogue trees have a limit. They have some point where you reach the end of the tree or the end of a node and you can't turn right, you can only turn left, or you can only say, okay, I'm done with this conversation now.
Right. Farewell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you imagine there'll be a video game where like you can talk to people and then at a certain point they won't just say the same thing that they said last time, like a weird robot. That always drives me crazy.
I
like
make
in
no
Mass
claims
Effect.
that it will be a good game. But that game will that game is absolutely coming, where you would be having fully AI generated conversations with an NPC that will be saying something that no human, lines of dialogue that no human has written. You will be having a conversation with the machine. I'm not saying that will be a good game. I'm not saying that that is what I'm most excited for in the future of gaming. I think in many ways it's a little bit of a bleak future to think about. But yes, absolutely, that game will exist. I think such games are already being made.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like people will accept this. This is a very bleak point of view, but I worry that people are just going to accept these products that are flatter, that are less, idiosyncratic, that have a less originality, because people already accept all kinds of terrible entertainment and are like, well, I guess I have to watch the new Michael Bay Transformers movie. What choice do I have?
Yeah, it is interesting, and I I hate to leave you on that note, Andrew, but we're going to let you go. A bleak
Thank
future
you, Andrew.
is how Andrew left us.
Let's do at least one more
I didn't
round.
want to
Let's
leave
try
it
and
on my stupid. I didn't want to leave on my stupid comment, Joe.
Let's try and redeem, somehow.
No, I think it is an excellent point and an excellent distinction, and I agree with you that video games are a story that are largely, the way we define video game is a story that is being told by a developer, a publisher, a team of writers that is crafting this story that gives you the ability to color in the lines, but you got to stay within the lines. AI GM tools, what the future of that looks like is you literally saying whatever you want to an NPC and then responding to what you say, not a choice of 4 lines of dialogue. To me, that is massively different than a video game. However, I can't see it, at least now, at least for the foreseeable future, ever being like a human in any way, in terms of how it can develop and craft a story and respond in a way that I don't think it'll trick me, basically, right? I don't think I'll be like, man, I can't believe this isn't a human being on the other side of this thing. That's just sort of my gut.
You don't
reaction
believe
to
it will, but you could be wrong, Joe. I mean,
Yeah.
I have a hard time believing that too, but maybe in 10 years it will be able to trick us.
Yeah,
as far as one
go
comment, as far as TTRPG content specifically goes, I think like it is a very specific type of content, a very specific form factor that current generative models aren't specifically trained to deal with or to be good at. And I think, the sort of like rules of Pathfinder or the rules of D&D, like a GM an AI GM making up skill checks or stat blocks, it's a very crude and clumsy emulation of some sources that somewhere in its ephemera of training data it's someday seen in the past. But these models don't know what D&D is. They don't know the rules of Pathfinder. So anything that they make up is horseshit, in that regard. Similarly, for like digital assets in like a VTT, like a top-down token or like a circle stamped token with the creature artwork in it, or a battle map that is designed to fit to a square grid where the grid positions are actually tactically or logically meaningful with regards to like buildings or walls or doors or anything. Like this isn't something that any of these image generation models know how to do. The only way that they ever learn how to do that is by taking a ton of maps and ton of tokens the human artists have made and learning how to fake it. And that ultimately is why, among other reasons, so many people are rightfully pissed off because, your model has no right to that. Your model has no right to take the years and years and years of hard work that I, as a cartographer, hypothetically, or I, as an illustrator, have put into mastering my craft, and then you don't just get a free ride on my hard work and the hard work of other people. But there's no other way for these models to get good at that. The only way for them to get good is to steal. There is no other way.
But artists also all steal, I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
If I were to look at like 5 different dungeons I liked and go, oh, I'll use this kind of elevation thing here, and I'll use this bridge encounter here. Am I stealing? It's like you said.
I mean, it sounds like
complex.
yes, you are. But the difference is like, we're talking about then selling that as original work or submitting that for an award and lying about how you made it.
No, that's not Joe. An artist, a person who's creating a new dungeon can absolutely, and I think that this is legitimately being an artist, go, I like how this worked over here in this thing and how this worked over here in this thing. Oh, and I liked this NPC from this adventure path. I'm going to give them a different name and kind of change them slightly. That's how art works.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I was literally talking about like photoshopping. That's what I imagined, like taking this part of this dungeon and this part of this dungeon. But I hear what you're saying.
That would be stealing, yeah.
Right, but just the idea of being inspired by these different artists and the work they've done before to come up with the ideas that you come up with. But
well, I think that the danger, and I know you got to move on to questions and I got to get out of here and whatnot, but the danger of these generative approaches becoming normalized and accepted in their current form is that it will gradually displace original creative work to the point where the industry becomes a closed loop system. There is not any external innovation. It's just these models that are kind of internally recreating the same thing that seems statistically plausible. Like, I, the machine, think that this looks like a map and it's plausible, so I'm going to spit it out. But there's no real creativity there. And I think that the danger of like, oh, is it just that it's bad for commercial products, or is it problematic in my own home games? Well, ultimately, like, the popularity of these tools is going to be based on how many people are using them. And whether it's commercial or not, if the kind of groundswell of sentiment about AI reaches a point where it is prevalent, it is like everyone who's running TTRPGs just kind of uses these tools, there won't really be much space left for artists to competitively have a place in the industry. And if that happens, then the system kind of becomes closed, and it could be kind of a death of creativity, at least a death of this type of creativity. Maybe other doors will open or other windows will open, but it is the nature of things. And it's not just, this is not the only technological innovation that has caused society to grapple with this type of conversation. It has happened in the past, and it will happen again, but it's where we are right now in this moment.
Yes, I agree. However, I think we can all agree that its applications in tabletop gaming are the most important.
The most important
of all
possible applications.
Also, McD, make a note that the YouTube title for this episode should be The Death of Creativity.
Featuring Andrew Clayton. Andrew, thank you so much for coming on.
9 a.m.
Dude,
morning.
I really appreciate it. I talked to Andrew about this briefly yesterday, but it is fully our intention to have you back again on Glass Cannon Radio as a regular guest. I think you have great insights into this community and into this whole area of how tech interfuses with this long-standing tradition of gaming that we've all experienced, and we all have to be ready for this changing world. And I think that you're have a great perspective on all of that. So we'll definitely have you back on Glass Cannon Radio, and I look forward to the next time. Thanks for coming on, buddy.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thank you so much, Joe, Jared. Great chatting with y'all, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah, take it easy, man. See you next time.
I want to thank Andrew for being smarter than us and also better able to articulate himself. Yes. Maybe he should host the show.
I know. There were multiple times I was just like, that's what I was thinking, but couldn't figure out how to say.
There were multiple times where I was like, he said a smart thing.
Yeah, exactly. It has been too long since we've heard the callers. Let me just say a huge apology to our Discord listeners who were not able to hear Andrew, but that was something that we knew was going to happen this week. But we're going to work on getting him into Discord next time. He just was not able to on short notice, and I was like, they could just watch it on Twitch. But I understand the confusion there, so apologies on that front. But if you want to come back into Discord and get on the line, let's do it. Let's get some people up here. Dude 36. Dude 36. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can. You sound great, dude.
Well, I appreciate it.
What do you want to talk about? Were you able to hear Andrew's interview?
I was. I mean, a little bit. Just kind of back and forth in the background.
Yeah. What are your thoughts?
I mean, so for background, I am a software developer. So I've been in the space with AI. I haven't worked with it specifically, but learned a lot about it in university. Did a bit with computer vision. So the main struggle that I have with it, as far as like general use, is the environmental impact of it. But as far as like in a creative space, you talked earlier about, or Jared talked earlier about having his, like the GM practice or your experience is like a muscle, right? The more you train with it, the better you use it, and so you're really honing your craft and kind of offloading that creative thinking onto a computer. I mean, that's very like the reason the Dune universe is the way that it is, it's
Thank you for bringing up Dune. You, of course, are referencing the Butlerian Jihad. And the fact that a war had to be, waged against the thinking machines, so that later in the Dune universe, all thinking machines and computers are outlawed. Yeah. Good
Absolutely.
point. Anytime someone brings up Dune, I know that they're making a good point.
I appreciate it. Yeah. The other thing that not a lot of people know about, but is something that we're starting to see more and more of a problem with because of its prevalence, is the fact that AI in general, in computer science terms, it's right now it's not a true AI. It's not a from the ground up built thinking machine. It's just taking millions upon billions upon trillions of examples that other people have used to train itself into a way of thinking. So it's, if you feed it garbage, you're going to get garbage out. If you feed it good stuff, you're going to get good stuff out, right? However, because
luckily most of the content out in the world is good stuff, right?
Oh, absolutely. There's just a plethora.
There's not a lot of garbage out there.
So, and for example, I don't know if you guys have played around with or seen like the AI generated photos all over like Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. But you can kind of start to see that it's developed a style, right? A specific like way that it looks, right? Everything's a bit oversaturated. The lines are way too, defined. And the reason it's doing that is because when, OpenAI and all of, that company just kind of said, here world, here's ChatGPT and here's its image generation, engine. Have at it. A bunch of people started generating images, and then it became a feedback loop of those images then get put into the training database under the guise that someone actually made them. And so it's training on its own generated image, which is kind of the snake eating itself. And in AI, like white pages and stuff like that, that always goes poorly and poisons the database. And so in my perspective, as someone who's somewhat knowledgeable about this, I think in 10 years or so, a lot of the like small, or I guess to say earlier trained open or all of the earlier trained language learning models are going to be a lot more successful than some of the later ones because their database is more human generated rather than computer generated.
So it's only going to get worse.
I think so. In some respects, if the database is cleared and you spend some time doing a lot of that kind of data cleanup, then absolutely it could be significantly better. But
yeah,
as a developer, you got to be incredibly wary of where you're getting what you're training on. And just given like O4 has, I think, something like several trillion lines of text that it's trained on, and they're only going to want to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So picking through 13 trillions of lines, it's gonna be possible.
Yeah, we hear you, and thanks for the call. And it is like the snake eating itself concept. It slowly degrades over time until it's only the feedback loop and everything. Very good points. And Dude also brought up, I had mentioned it just briefly earlier, but the environmental impact is another huge whole aspect of this thing that takes it out of just generative AI and into all elements of how these tools are used. Very concerning aspect as well to make sure that we're listening to and focused on. One thing I want to say before we go to the next caller is I talked to a few people about this when I knew we were going to talk about it on the show. I reached out to some contacts that I have in different spaces. There was one in the tech space and one in gaming. And I asked, how they're using or how AI comes up in their day to day. And the person that I spoke to in gaming is kind of in the video game development area, but in that crossover to RPGs. And their comment was very simply that the AI, I just want people to know this. There's kind of from the inside, a lot of people are working on this. Ton of people, like Andrew was saying, want to develop these tools that you can talk to an NPC and get spit out original responses that are based on your questions, not lines of dialogue that are preset. And this person's experience thus far has been that it works very briefly and then collapses over and over and over again. And that the AI it's just not able to run games yet in an effective way as an NPC and actually respond in a way that doesn't feel flat and like a robot. It can have lines that will surprise you with how poetic or good they are or shockingly well done. You're like, oh my gosh, this is like, what a great GM. And then within a minute, we'll say something that is nonsensical and completely breaks you out of it. So, and then on the tech end of things, which I found very interesting, someone said, everybody is talking about this all the time in our space. And you get the sense that it is a lot of talk and a lot of air and not a lot of actual sort of people can't actually say what is happening or what they're doing. You'll be in a presentation, people will be like AI this and AI that. They'll be like, but what is the AI actually doing or how is it actually working? And you get like just null responses. It's like everybody's talking about it, but there's no real nobody can really point to exactly how this is being used in their own companies. It's really kind of wild, but just want to get that out there before we bring up Jen with two N's to the stage. Yeah.
Oh, hello.
Please. Hello, Jen. Welcome back. Hello. How are you?
I'm great. Well, the world. I'm good right now.
Yeah, good. We're glad you're here.
I feel like that's if anytime someone says how are you doing now, you have to say the world.
Yeah.
And then you can move on.
Yes.
Yeah. Thoughts. But anyway, so my kind of stance is like, I do think there is a place for AI. Like I want it to help humans. I don't want it to replace humans. I want it to help take my meeting minutes. I want it to help finesse an email that I'm struggling to craft really well. A lot of times I'll put things in there and say, help me fix this, and learn from that. I want it to be a tool for my job and such. I actually used it last night for the first time to help with a new character I was going to play, to help with inspiration for backstory, because I was stuck. Like, heck, a 2E game I was playing, I had a summoner, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh crap, I played Folian of Urxius. You know, like, is that ripping off you, Joe? Like, it's just, you know.
That's theft, Jen with two N's. It's theft.
You're
All right,
allowed
fine.
to do that. You're allowed to just steal a character in the glass cannon and play it. That's fine.
Great, big baby, next character coming to you. But anyway, it's a lot of it too is like, would we have these same thoughts and feelings if it was magically, ethically okay? You know, I think a lot of people are kind of opposed to it, and I think rightly so, because where is it pulling the info from? You know, the physical resources and climate change, like all of that is an issue. You know, in even like how it deals with like deep fakes in videos of people, you know, all of a sudden it's like, what if someone like put this video of you out, Joe, doing some whatever, and it, you know, like taints your reputation. And of course, people are going to not know that's AI and be like, oh, Joe would never dance with the Harlem Globetrotters. But, you know, you did, right. Whatever it is, like.
Yes.
I love that that's the thing that takes down Joe.
Well, that's a story for another Discord.
No, it is. It truly, it is. I just think that I think it's insane. I think that as a celebrity, as a real celebrity, you must live in, you know, constant fear, constant terror of this happening to you. You know, any kind of A-list celebrity. I can't believe it's not happening more, honestly. Like, I think that it would be happening all the time.
No, it is happening, Joe. I mean, like, let's just like talk about a movie, Rogue One, that everybody says is so great. But they took Peter Cushing's face. They put his face on another actor, and they make this person play Grand Moff Tarkin, but they're using Peter Cushing's face. Yes. Now, obviously, the Cushing estate signed off on that, but I think it is anathema, and it's awful. And
awful.
When you talk about
it wasn't even good.
And it wasn't even good.
Right.
Well, how about Ian Holm? Ian Holm in the most recent Alien Romulus movie. I mean, I would say arguably the worst part of that movie, something that really damaged the movie for me. So like,
incredibly unnecessary.
And unnecessary, you could have had another actor play the role. You could have used practical effects and have some kind of like weird puppet thing. Though both of those options would have been better. And I think that when we're talking about creativity, we need to apply that to actors too. When Peter Cushing plays Grand Moff Tarkin, he is creating that role himself. That character doesn't really exist outside of Peter Cushing. Now, another actor can come and recreate their own version, but taking his skin mask and digitally putting it on someone's face is macabre.
Yeah.
And it needs that kind of shit needs to stop.
Sorry, Jen, real quick. Rebel Then King from Twitch chat says how terrible this part is of Rogue One and says it's just immersion breaking. Just get another actor who looks somewhat like him and it would be so much better. We agree. Jen, sorry, Jared went off on a rant there before his actual nerd rant.
I have more to come.
Did you have anything else, Jen, on AI or tabletop, how you use it in your tabletop games?
Not much else. Like I said, it was the first time I really used it last night.
Were you happy with the results?
You know, I was. It was a good base that I felt like was a little more unique, and it was something that helped me to say, okay, I can take these pieces and really flesh out a new character for me, you know? Yeah. So I'm happy with it because I was agonizing over like, okay, I got to make this new thing. I want it to be great. I want to feel good about this character. So I think there's a place for it. I wish we could make it fully ethical. Who knows how and when we're going to do that. But yeah, it is a good tool for certain situations. I think it's up to each person to realize where you apply that tool and how you're okay doing so. And where's that line for every person?
Well said, Jen. Well said. Let's keep the callers coming. Do you have a comment on Jen's comment?
Can I jump in here? Well, no, I just want to say, can we broaden the topic now and kind of like just talk about technology in general? Because we've been talking about AI for a while.
Yeah.
But I would really like to just get into, if people would like to tell us, Jen just told us how she used technology to help her create a character. If people want to just say, hey, this is how I'm using technology in my games, or how they feel about VTTs, or how they feel about, say, the D&D Beyond character sheet that rolls for you. Like, you know, it's tabletop tech.
That's
like,
it. That's interesting. That's a good pivot. Yeah, I like that. I mean, look, we've said a lot on AI. I think that we could talk about it ad nauseum. But I think we're going to start, like the AI itself, I think we're going to get into a bit of a loop here.
We're going to start saying the same things.
Right.
And I just want to start off, you know, with this pivot by saying that I hate technology. And
I know you do.
I hate having to learn a VTT, which to me, it's like, hey, want to play role-playing games? All right, learn a new software program. It's only going to take you 80 hours of hard work. And I get really sort of discouraged is when I go on a site like Start Playing Games, where there are GMs for hire, right? And people talk about another use of technology with tabletop role-playing games, a website where you can hire GMs. And I noticed that the GMs that are getting hired are people who have painstakingly created these extremely complex layered maps and like VTT experiences. And I wonder if their GMing is any good. To me, it looks like a director who spent all the time talking to the people that build the sets and never talked to the actors. But I don't know. I haven't played in those games. So anyway, my point is, weigh in on any way that you find technology affects your game, because I'd like to hear it. Joe would like to hear it. All right, that's it.
Do you prefer, now you play in a home game, is that home game, do you lay out maps and use minis in that game?
So when I played a 2.5-3 year Dungeons & Dragons 5e campaign at home, we used minis and we used the dry erase map.
Yeah.
Right now in the One Ring game, we do mostly theater of the mind. And I think that sometimes a game calls for theater of the mind. Sometimes it calls for maps and minis. I actually thought, okay, so I ran a Pathfinder adventure, The Fall of Plaguestone, for my players.
Yes.
And that was totally available for a VTT. So I said, guys, instead of me like dry erasing the whole time and having these little minis that fall over, what if we all bring our laptops and we use the VTT while we're playing in person? And you know what? Ultimately, my players were like, thank you for running that, Jared. That was fun. But we didn't really like doing it that way because we felt like we were staring at our computer screens instead of each other the whole time. And it's just like, I know everybody has fun in different ways. Okay. And what's fun for you may not be fun for me. But to me, when I think of what my version of tabletop role-playing games are, it's us looking in each other's eyes, and it's us like feeling each other's energy. And I even think, and you and I play once a week a game over the internet. You're in the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast. But I think you even lose a little bit doing that. You not so much.
Oh my God, are you kidding me? I'd love to play in person with you. I'd love for our game to be.
Well, I'm coming to the East Coast this summer. We'll play a game in person.
I love it. Let's see. Let's have other people weigh in on this. How your thoughts on how you use technology in your games at home make your life easier. Do you use maps and minis? Loki Thunderson, I like that name. Loki Thunderson. I've invited you up to speak if you'd like to. And if we don't see you, we'll just keep moving. Let's go to Tom O'Brien. Love that name. Tom O'Brien. Tom, your mic is muted. If you want to.
Hello.
Hey,
hi.
Tom. How are you?
Now, Joe, this is your brother, right?
Yeah, this is my brother, Tom.
Said we weren't going to admit it, Joe.
What's going on, Tom? How are you?
I'm doing great. I wanted to say, I run a lot of 2E. I like to incorporate a lot of tech because mostly I play over Discord or other video services. And I had a very interesting experience this past month. There was a lot of people who were in town for the holidays, and I got together for the first time in many years for a fully in-person game, which was wonderful. And a lot of people who were curious about 2E who hadn't gotten a chance to play it before. So we were like, okay, I modified the beginner's box to make it about Christmas, which was fun. But I found that we used a dry erase map and everything, but using a character builder was really helpful for a lot of people. We used a path builder, but I know that there's a ton of other systems that do a great job. But in my experience, it's great for people who are already immersed in the game, who know the rules. But by making your life easier, it's pretty common for people to miss things. They don't know where this bonus is coming from. They don't see an ability because they haven't actually gone to a book or Archives of Nithis or whichever to actually read the summoner. So I had a player in a long-running campaign that it wasn't until we were level 15 that realized that the summoner had to act together. She because it wasn't a huge choice
part of the summoner class,
right? It wasn't a choice that she got made in the character creator.
Right.
She had seen where all those spots
it's a base aspect of the mechanics of the character. It wouldn't be mentioned in a character creator, right?
Yeah,
exactly. So in terms of rules, we had each other to play off of, but nobody else was reading the summoner, so it wasn't until well in. So I think that some of these tools are really supportive if you already know what you're doing, but they can hide important aspects if you overly rely on them as you're learning a new system.
Yeah. I think that's what a great point. That
thank you, Tom.
Technology makes us. Yeah, thank you, Tom. The technology makes us it's running the character sheet for us. We don't actually know what's on our character sheet because it's populating it with all these things, and we're not taking the time to read the core book and figure out how our characters work. But I will say, having met a lot of players, that was a huge problem even before we had automated character sheets.
Yeah, I agree. And I use automated character sheets for everything. There have been times when I've been tempted to just go back to a character sheet and a pencil and I was build this from scratch and really see, how it all shakes out. And it's just, to me, it's just not worth it. I feel like the character builder gets me into what I want to do so much faster, which is play. Right? Just create story together, get into those moments. I don't want the character creation to be an impingement to getting to that point, especially with newer players. But I do completely recognize that those shortcuts do have consequences that you have to be aware of and conscious of, before you jump right in. Let's take another caller. Baylor the Bard. We got to get caller heavy here because we were so long on with Andrew with no callers. Baylor, I've invited you up if you're still around, if you'd like to speak. It can be tricky to learn how to do this. All right, let's move on to Verdukai. Verdukai, can you? Yeah, hey, what's up?
Hi, how you doing?
Doing great. How are you?
Same as Jen. It's minute by minute.
The world.
I'm going to start doing it like this. I'm going to start going, hello, the world. Can I get a grande macchiato?
Verdukai, your thoughts on the on your tabletop tech. What do you use?
So I play in a game with my brothers-in-law. They run for us. And so it was my first experience using a virtual tabletop, or not a virtual tabletop, but Foundry virtual tabletop.
Oh, okay.
And have had several other games run with Roll20, but they were all more Blades in the Darky, storytelly, evidence boardy. So it worked really well. But man, Foundry is just really gorgeous.
Yeah,
so
it is gorgeous. It definitely, to me, it heightens the game experience for me, for sure.
It's funny, though. I keep trying to tell my brothers-in-law, I guess they installed it a while ago, and there's something wrong with it to where it gives us errors when we load. We keep saying, let us know. We can send you money to fix whatever. So I don't know if it's wrong with it, but sometimes it's a little glitchy for us.
Well, I gotta tell you, all VTTs, so I'm not picking on Foundry or Roll20 or anything. There's constantly, as a GM, I'm let me just move this character. Oh, I stretched him out. Okay. maybe I can move this token here. Oh, I've moved the map. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I know everybody in the chat right now is going to be like, well, you were on the map level and you should have been. Yeah, but I know that. But I'm just telling you, like, it gives you way too many options.
Yes.
When would I ever need to stretch a token? And if I need to stretch a token, shouldn't that be an extra special menu I go into? The stretch a token menu? That shouldn't just be something I can do on the fly accidentally.
They need to have like a menu for babies like me who are like, I don't use this a whole lot. And then a menu for like.
Are you calling me a baby?
Yes. But a cute one.
Oh.
Yeah. What are you going to do
now? I love you again.
So, Verdukai, are you sticking with, so this remote game is ongoing?
Yes. Yeah. It's like we get together about once a month or so. They're over in like San Diego and we're in Vermont. So it's like our way of keeping our family talking to each other on a regular basis.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
But otherwise, if you were at home, you wouldn't start using a VTT in a room with people.
I don't think so, unless I was like setting it up that way from the beginning. Like, I can't remember who it was, which Discord it was. It was somebody in the Naish sharing a picture of like their game room. And I could see that, I think that they had like a projector in the ceiling to like shine down on the table. And I was like, that would be a really cool way to like integrate like a virtual scene into like your game in person.
Yeah.
But I also could have totally been misreading it, and that's not what it was for.
No,
but
I think you're onto something there, and thanks for calling in again. It was 2 weeks in a row with Verdukai. It's very nice.
Thank you, Verdukai.
We've looked into that as well at times. You know, the projecting down or literally playing on a screen that's like in the table. That's really fun stuff too that some people are doing. It's interesting. I had brought up Baylor before, and I think that what would you want to say, Jared, real quick?
I just think it's bullshit. All of that, like projecting or like the screens turning on, like I know I'm being very polarized here, but it's like
you're being very old. You're being so old.
We're spending all of this time on this stuff, but to me the game isn't the stuff. To me the game is the story. It's it could be the combats, it's the encounters, and it's the interaction between the people, and it's most importantly people laughing together. And it is not what I know will happen, which is my GM starting the session and then spending 41 minutes getting the projector to work. That is 1,000% what is going to happen.
Fair enough. Baylor, the Bard, we tried to bring you up earlier and it wasn't working, but it looks like you're on now. Can you hear us? Your mic looks muted. Sorry, Baylor. Oh, wait.
Fuck.
Oh.
Hey, now that's a way to come into a room.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Baylor. How you doing?
Welcome.
I've been over here trying to figure out how to get this to work with my accessibility assistive technology stuff. So that's the end result right there. So
we can hear you. We can hear you now. What's going on? What are your thoughts on tabletop tech?
So I'm totally blind. I have been my whole life, and it kind of impacts my view on this a little bit in that I essentially am stuck in a situation where I have to use it for basically all of my TTRPG needs.
Yeah.
So even if I'm in person, like I've got to use, like I got to bring my phone or something for my character builder character sheet, because a Braille character sheet would just be a book because of how much space Braille takes up, and you couldn't do your hit points on the fly or anything.
So let me ask you, Baylor, how does this first come into your life and develop, right? Like, what was your first experience in tabletop RPGs, and how did you utilize tools to get that up and running?
So my first experience was a Roll20 Wrath of the Righteous campaign.
I love Wrath. Okay.
Yeah. And Pathfinder First Edition. Never got to finish it, which is real sad. We only got like halfway through book 2. But it essentially was like Roll20 back in 2015 or whatever year it was when I started was very bad for accessibility. And they're kind of they're somewhat better now. Like, I don't want to crap on Roll20 Like they've made progress. But it was essentially like it took me the whole first year of like essentially it started off with the DM running my character sheet. And finally I figured out how to get to the character sheet with my assistive technology, because things weren't really labeled. So my little robot voice that I have to listen to wasn't telling me everything I needed to know to find my way around. And finally I figured that, and the character sheet we used was created by a custom creator, and it was actually very accessible. So from then on, I was able to kind of roll my own dice and everything. But the one thing that isn't accessible anywhere is like the tactical map element of it. So I always have to kind of talk to my friends if I'm playing with people who can see.
You're always playing Theater of the Mind.
Yes, and when I DM, I pretty much run exclusively Theater of the Mind.
And that works for you, right? Running a Theater of the Mind, right? Yeah.
And I actually like it better. Like it makes
I sometimes
combats,
do too.
Yeah, I think it makes combats less restrictive, especially in a system like 2nd edition Pathfinder, which I love. But like sometimes the map, like especially Paizo maps, which are just so small sometimes from what I've been told, can make combats very, very restrictive. And like I enjoy Theater of the Mind because I can just be like, it's much bigger and there's much more environment to interact with. And like, I enjoy the shit out of that.
I love Theater of the Mind. I love Theater of the Mind for tactical combat as well. I feel like there's a lot of, I just wish there weren't so many abilities out there that are designed around movement. Like you don't want to kind of hamstring characters that spent their general feat on fleet, for example, right? Like
you have to tell your players, hey, don't take fleet. Because so you are adding work in that way. You're having to go hey guys, these are the parameters for how to create your character because we're doing Theater of the Mind. Also, as a big proponent of Theater of the Mind, I'll be the first one to admit, if I want to do a combat with 10 ghouls running at you, it's extremely tricky and challenging in Theater of the Mind to figure out who's hitting which ghoul and which ghoul is hitting who. It's a lot easier if I'm running a boss battle with one big dragon, but it gets tough when I want to do those skirmishes between two large groups.
Yeah, I think I've done one of those, like a bunch of skeletons or whatever, and I ran like skeleton 6 for like 2 whole rounds after he was dead. Just because, back in the early days of doing it, it's one of the reasons I really want to play Blades, because like you don't need a map for Blades in the Dark.
Yeah,
I feel like.
Yeah, that's why Jared loves himself some Blades. Baylor, thank you so much for calling. And
thank you, Baylor.
Another awesome perspective or angle on this whole conversation is like, what if you can't even play the game without technology? Really awesome to get that point of view as well. It's like there's these tools out there. Let's take one more caller, and then I want to move on to to Blue Velvet. I can't. Oh boy,
I can't wait.
Anu, come up and talk to us. Anu?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yep, perfectly.
Awesome. Welcome to Glass Cannon Radio.
So, first and foremost, before I forget, for book club, I'd like to make a suggestion. The Shadow of the Gods.
Great. What is it called?
It is The Shadow of the Gods. It is a great book. I just read it this week, so...
The Shadow of the Gods.
Shadow of the Gods. What is
John
it?
Glenn.
Give me John Glenn. Give me the elevator pitch.
So ultimately, it's a bunch of Vikings in a fantasy setting.
Okay.
Imagine D&D with Vikings. That's what you got.
with Vikings. It sounds like something I would like. Can I ask you this? Are there any graphic erotic scenes in it?
I'm not sure about that. I mean, there is a part where there's...
Then I'm afraid it's pretty low on my list.
there is one sex scene, but they don't go into detail.
It just went way up. All right. So can you tell us about tech and how it applies to your gaming?
Yeah, so honestly, I'm fairly new to Dungeons and Dragons and everything, but I'm also in the military, and I've tried using Roll20 multiple times. And I don't know if I love it or hate it, but I finally agree with Jared for once. ultimately, every time I get on Roll20, it's horrible. You know, every single time I get in there, it's just horrible DMing, horrible everything. You know, everybody takes 30 minutes to set up map, stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know,
a lot of dead time, a lot of lost time.
It maybe doesn't really save you time, you know, unless the person is extremely proficient, which means that they've had to commit a lot of time.
And it's a lot more being a new player and all, like learning not only D&D, but also learning the aspects of the online role play.
What a great point. Yeah, you have to learn how to use the software in addition to learning how to play your character.
And when you're new to the hobby, what a heavy lift. Like, it's complicated enough to even understand how to play a game. And I'm not even talking about your character mechanics. I'm talking about learning the flow of a TTRPG, learning, you know, that experience. To me, that the Roll20-ness of it, so to speak, can be such a roadblock to just like understanding the interaction that's supposed to be happening, the kind of joy you're supposed to experience, you know, laughing and adventuring with your friends in this environment. It's that's a really good point. It's for brand new players that are introduced with a load of technology up front as well. It complicates the process.
It almost made me want to get out of the whole D&D scene at first. Like the first time I played Roll20, you know, like it's just miserable. You know, you don't get a look across from the guy across from you and, you know, ask him questions or whisper to, you know, your buddy sitting next to you, you know, while the DM's talking. You know?
These are great things about playing in person.
And it's a great point. Thank you, Anu, for the call. Yeah, it's a great point that to take away those little tiny things like learning the game, like what should I do here? You just want to ask one person. You don't want to like stop the whole game for everybody and whatever. I mean, we don't even really have to go into like, is playing in person better? You know, like that's not really the discussion. You know, that's pretty obvious, but it is interesting to see how tech can really help, how tech can be essential, but then also, as Anu says, how tech can actually be a roadblock to learning the game when you're new to it. And not just the character creation aspect like we heard earlier from a caller, but the interaction of the table and the whole map experience can be really...
I do see all the benefits, but like everything else, it's good and bad. You know, like that's probably true of AI too. It's good and bad, and you have to decide how much the good stuff weighs in comparison to the bad stuff for you. You know, I mean, maybe getting to play with your family who's on a different coast, that is a benefit that outweighs, you know, the trickiness of learning a VTT, or the fact that your brother can never manage to really figure out how to get it to work. So I want to set up our next thing. Are we ready to go?
I'm ready.
Okay. So
actually, I don't know if I'm ready. But
you're ready for the rest of the month. Last week on our first episode, we talked about the passing of the incredible, surreal, dreamlike director David Lynch and his incredible body of work. And we found out that Joe had only seen one David Lynch film, which scared him like a little baby, to use Verdukai's terminology. So we decided that we were going to continue all month for 4 weeks, kind of diving into the work of David Lynch. And we noticed that, Joe and I noticed that a lot of the films were just thrown up on Max after David Lynch's passing. So we decided to have Joe and I rewatched Blue Velvet, his 1986 film noir thriller journey into the dark side, starring Kyle MacLachlan, Laura Dern, Isabella Rossellini, and Dennis Hopper. And I just want to very briefly give the plot of this film in the briefest terms imaginable before we get Joe's reaction. So if you've never seen the film, it's extremely dark, extremely strange, but still has sort of a plot that you can follow. It's not completely disjointed and weird. It's not as surreal, I'd say, as Mulholland Drive, the other film that you said you had seen, Joe. But basically, a young man who's home from college because his father is sick finds an ear in a vacant lot. That ear leads him to the police, which leads him on his own investigation into a woman named Dorothy Valance, who's involved in a web of violence and intrigue involving a criminal named Frank, played by Dennis Hopper. And when this boy, this college guy, Kyle MacLachlan, enters this world, he goes from his like sort of perfect white picket fences suburban life into the dark underbelly of his town. And Dennis Hopper's character, and this will explain the chyron that is about to appear below me, Dennis Hopper's character is a complete psychopath who huffs gas and then says, "Baby wants to fuck." And that is one of the main reasons I love this movie and one of the biggest influences on my particular creative style. So, Joe, what did you think of Blue Velvet?
I thought, well, going in, it was very helpful to know a little bit more about David Lynch's style, right? I went into Mulholland Drive thinking it was just a regular movie. I didn't right? So you're really shocked by the surrealness of it. I went into this afraid. I was honestly afraid that it was going to like give me nightmares or something like that. And it was not like that at all. But it was fucked up, as you said. I mean, fucked up. And at first, the right out of the gate, you get the bugs in the ground that just are a very eerie sort of shot. It's like, why? And it's strange, and the ear, and it's just very, very weird. And man, does it take it to another level when Kyle MacLachlan is hiding in a closet and when you first witness Frank and how bizarrely evil he is.
Yes.
It is, it really, I was like, this is, I'm not crazy to say that the stuff that was coming out of David Lynch's mind, it makes me feel like he is the devil. Now, obviously, since the topic last week and reading into it and everything, I mean, so many people have just the nicest things to say about this guy and what a warm and caring, although strange individual he is, whatever. The darkness that is portrayed in this movie, to me, it's to be able to generate this stuff out of your mind and then make a film about it it's just shocking. It really is shocking. Now, what I will say is that there are certain parts of the movie that I was like, is this just the movie aging? Like not aging as well because it was the 80s or whatever. And there were other parts that I was like, what is the word I'm looking for? I am enthralled. I was completely enthralled at times with MacLachlan's relationship with Isabella Rossellini and how sexual it was. Like it was so intensely sexual. While he also then has this Laura Dern relationship, which is like more traditional, right? And sweet. And
but there's more love. There's maybe more love there, or more of a spiritual connection, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. But you feel like this kid, right? Because at that he looks so young. This kid getting pulled in these different directions, and then when it really comes down to it, and he's sort of like taken by Frank and that whole crew, which included Brad Dourif, which I thought was so awesome. I was like, Brad Dourif!
Yeah, Brad Dourif.
Like how
Dean Stockwell.
Exactly, Dean Stockwell, like with his like weirdly like his mascara eyes.
When he punches him?
Yeah, it's so strange. But how scared he must have been. Like that scene in the car is so scary because he's all boxed in, and Dennis Hopper is phenomenal. Like, so I love Dennis Hopper so much in Hoosiers. That's my big Dennis Hopper movie, right? He's such a wonderful actor in that movie, and in this, to see him. To me, I was like, how do you read this script and say, I want to do this movie? Like looking at those lines, they're so creepy. They're so crazy. They're so out there. Well, he takes it and he buys in so deeply that the way that he says fuck in every single line, and he lands it every time. He hits it so hard and so well, and he's just terrifying. I thought he did an amazing job. I don't know for sure. I haven't read a making of account, but I would assume that some of that was improvised, and I know that Lynch likes to be very improvisational when he directs. So
I would imagine that some things in the film are very scripted and some are a little bit more loose. But what I wanted to ask is, do you sort of agree with the basic premise of the film, which is that, you know, we exist in sort of this safe kind of world of like people who are polite and nice to each other and follow the rules and obey the laws and are respectable. We're not degenerate. We're not debased in our sexual habits. But right underneath the surface of that is the Dennis Hopper world of like huffing drugs and crashing cars and saying, baby wants to fuck, while you like, you know, basically, I mean, let's be clear. It's a very dark film where you abuse this woman whose husband you've kidnapped. Do you think that our society, our world has that sort of underbelly that's always just beneath a thin, you know, coating of like a thin veneer?
I do believe that. I think that it's a really interesting aspect of that film is that what I kept thinking was, so very briefly, I did door-to-door sales. Very briefly. I just was, it was a time in my life where I was in the restaurant business. I hated it. I really wanted to get out of it. And I was just trying to find ways to make money. And it was just after September 11th. The job market was terrible. I was doing interviews and stuff like that, but I couldn't really get anything. And I got this door-to-door sales job that basically paid cash. And I'd have to knock on people's houses. What I saw in that just like 4-month span that I worked that job was just how wildly different it is inside someone's house or someone's apartment that you could see outside. You could see at the market. You never know. And then the way that people live can be so different from what you expect or the circles that you move in. And that kept recurring to me in this particular scene where he goes into this woman's apartment and you're going into a stranger's place of living. You have no idea what you'll see there. And this film does a great great job of showing you such an extreme, dark thing that you did not expect to see at all. That is very, very disturbing. I think that it's an interesting look into like, you never know what's going on inside the house next door, right? Like there's been a few movies about this recently, right? About small town neighborhood houses, everything looks, picket fence and whatever. And then inside these horrible things are happening.
What did you see in these people's houses while you were going door to door? I'm very curious.
Well, like hoarder-ish people.
Yeah.
There was definitely a lot of that. There were some people that were, I remember one woman in particular who was intensely religious, and she was like, step inside. And I came in and she was in like a nightgown, and she just started going off about how I was meant to be there, like in this moment. And you look around and there was just like, there were like pictures of Jesus up all over the place and like little like altars and like things to kneel on, like in a church, little shrines and stuff like that, right next to like dirty dishes and a gallon of milk and stuff. Like it was just this small little condo in this condo building where we were working one day. And I was just like, you never know. I didn't see any real dark, fucked up shit, though. I will say some of those hoarder apartments were real, and houses were really dark and smelled, and that kind of stuff.
Kara and I lived beside some people at one point, and we were in apartments. They were very, very clean. When you saw them out, they were affable. They looked put together, good clothes. They had great jobs, like well-paying jobs. And then when they moved out, the apartment manager was like, look in here. And I looked in their apartment, and it was like a hoarder's apartment where like things were covered in a layer of dirt. And then also like their toilet had no seat on it. So either they took that with them or they were just kind of squatting over the toilet.
Oh my God.
And these are people that had good jobs in the entertainment industry.
What did you think on your rewatch? Did anything jump out to you that you didn't remember, or anything that
what's amazing is I saw this movie last year at the New Beverly, where they show movies like this. So I saw it in 2024, I think, at the New Beverly. It might have been 2023. I had forgotten so much. And that's what I think we don't realize about rewatching movies is like, you're like, oh, I saw that. I know what happens in it. You forget everything. Trust me. And if you saw it last year, you're going to see it differently this year. So I enjoyed it, I think, even more than I did when I saw it on the big screen last year. And I thought, I just think it's like really brilliant. Because it manages to be funny in addition to being sort of scary, which is a hard trick to pull off. But David Lynch is good at that.
I want to ask you a couple things real fast. So let's talk about some kind of some messed up scenes. Okay, so one is when they feel like they're being chased by like Frank, but it turns out to be her boyfriend, Laura Dern's boyfriend. And he's just like a jock at school that wants to like rough him up. Like, hey, you taking out my girl or whatever. And it's out front of her house, out front of Laura Dern's house. And Isabella Rossellini comes out of the bushes, like completely nude and all beat up and scratched and scarred. It's just like, oh my God, like it's so crazy. But then like the way she keeps like hugging him inside and like whispering sweet nothings to him, I feel like to me, it's, those scenes, they're so strange because there's no concept of realism to me in those particular scenes. Like when Laura Dern's mom is just looking at this nude woman and it's like, I think I'm going to call the police. Like, you know, like very calmly and like has this, she's not doing well.
But maybe that is how someone would react. I mean, how would they go hysterical? You know, it's interesting that you mentioned the Isabella Rossellini walking out of the bushes naked, because that's based on a real experience David Lynch had when he was a boy or much younger. He remembers seeing a nude woman walking down the street in trouble, obviously, and it bothered him so much that, according to the source I read, he said that it made him cry, you know, as a kid to see this thing. So it got in there really deep, and he put it into the film, you know.
And it comes at such an intense moment. You have two people arguing over this thing, and then suddenly it's like completely dropped because this you know, battered woman essentially comes walking out of the bushes.
Right, because that fight between the jock and Kyle MacLachlan, because Kyle took his girl, that belongs to the upper world of sunshine and picket fences and watering your lawn.
Yeah.
And Isabella Rossellini is from the dark underworld, and she pops up and everything is recontextualized, you know?
Yeah. It's really interesting. Okay, and then one other part, and this is one of those parts this was the most Mulholland Drive moment to me. Now, I don't remember much about Mulholland Drive, and I will never watch it again. So, like, I don't really know how to exactly...
Sorry, Joe, that's next week.
How to exactly describe it. But the moment to me that felt the most like it creeps me out to a point where, like, I want to turn it off is where I think it's when you first see Dean Stockwell, that, like, party in the apartment scene. When it's over and Frank is like, we're leaving, we're out of here, everybody get your shit, blah, 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 we're going. There's like some strange, to me, like distorted figure sitting on the couch that you don't see most of the time, but then it steps to the side and it's like it feels like a distorted face. It might just be like a pillow over something's face or something.
I don't remember this at all. Are you sure that you saw that?
And then he's like, let's go, blah, blah, blah. You can kind of see one person's shoulder behind him and him saying, let's go. And then they vanish from the scene. They do like kind of like pop out of the scene. I remember and they're gone, but it stays there for 1 second with that figure just like on the couch with either something over, it's blurred deliberately, something over its face or like a distorted like monster face is how I saw it. And it creeped the shit out of me and I was like, fuck this David Lynch shit. I hate it.
And that's what people are talking about when they're talking about that dreamlike style, you know, because it feels a little bit like a nightmare, you know, the way that and that's just him moving from one scene to another. That was just a kind of a transition, you know?
Yeah, and it was cool. It was like, it definitely made me like, it weirded me out. But I thought it was an interesting choice. And then bring it back full circle and he does the bugs again at the end. which was really neat.
There's a bug motif. Yeah, I love
bug
it.
motif is very cool.
What is more out of the underworld than an insect,
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I mean,
check it out. If you haven't seen it before, you really should. And please let us know, what Lynch film you might like us to talk about next, or what aspect of his work. We're going to keep coming back to it for a couple weeks here, maybe 2 more weeks. So Joe, thanks for watching that, because I know having homework is a whole thing. And if you had been like, I got through 15 minutes, I would have been like, no problem.
Yeah. And Clorpdonk says in Twitch chat, use it for your Delta Green, John. And honestly, there was great inspiration in there for role-playing games, for Delta Green, for evil NPCs. Man, what a bunch of stuff to pull from that you would never think of. It's just very twisted.
Clorpdonk also wrote, Jared bursts from Bush's nude all the time. So
we'll take his opinions with a grain of salt.
Yes. So shall we close out with me giving my opinion on something that's really been bothering me?
And I'm not familiar with where you're going with this. You just said I've got something I'm pissed about, and I'm curious to see where this goes. It's Jared's Nerd Rant.
Yes, here we go. It's time for me to weigh in on something that's really, really, really been bothering me. In 2024, the musical film Wicked was received to rave reviews and excellent box office receipts. It has been nominated for an Academy Award. It is a great film in many respects. The sets and the costumes are unbelievably beautiful. The acting is fine. It's very solid. The songs and the way that they are performed, the melodies, they're earworms. Defying Gravity is an all-time musical number.
All-time earworm, yeah.
However, when I watch a film about a magical fantasy world, I pay the closest attention to the magic system of that world. And I cannot in good conscience recommend the film Wicked, because the magic system of Wicked makes no sense. I will now break it down for you. When Elphaba, played by Cynthia Erivo, first arrives at the magical academy named Shiz, which sounds like the name that someone who doesn't read fantasy books thinks fantasy things are called. When she arrives at Shiz, she has an experience where she telekinetically, psychokinetically moves a bunch of objects when she becomes angry. So it first appears like the magic system in Oz is a psionic system, right? Our emotions and mental energy are able to affect the outer world around us. When Michelle Yeoh, who is one of the deans of the school, sees that Elphaba is able to throw a bunch of chairs with her mind when she gets angry, she's like, this is a very talented student, and I've got to take her under my wing, all right? So I'm thinking, all right, so the magic system in Wicked is psychokinesis. And then we see Michelle Yeoh teaching Elphaba to move a coin with her mind. More psychokinesis, right? But Elphaba is not able to move the coin with her mind. She keeps messing up. It keeps going clonk and not working, all right? Shortly after that, Michelle Yeoh tells her that she is the most powerful wizard that has ever lived, and she is destined to help rule Oz alongside the Wizard of Oz. And I'm in the theater dude, she can't move a coin. How can she be the most powerful? She doesn't have the coin thing down.
She's still working on the coin, dude.
She's still working on the coin. And I feel like the screenwriters never show us how the people are learning magic. At one point, they're learning magical history, but we never see the instructors at Shiz teaching how the magic is supposed to work. In Harry Potter, which is what I would compare it to, Wicked being a weak-ass, pale imitation of Harry Potter. In Harry Potter, we see them learn the spells, and we kind of get how the spells are supposed to work. You have a wand. It's tailor-made for you. There are verbal incantations that you shout.
That you must say correctly. If you say them slightly wrong, you can do other things you didn't intend to.
Yes. And in addition, there is an alchemical system. But other than that, that's how the magic works. And Wicked, it's psychokinesis, can't move a coin, you're the chosen one. And then once they've decided she's the chosen one, they take her to the wizard, and the wizard's like, I need you to read this magical book that no one else can read. And I'm like, what? Where did the books come into it? And how come you can't read it? And why is she able to read it just because she can make a coin flop over? Like, it's like, so she has to cast this spell using this book. And I'm like, where was the book when she was trying to move the coin? How come we've never seen these books before? So she tries to cast a levitation spell from the book. A levitation spell.
Yeah. This is great. This is what I was hoping you would get here.
And instead of making anything levitate, she causes an army of monkeys to grow wings. Now that, by any rubric, is a failure to cast the levitation spell. One might even say a catastrophic failure. And yet Michelle Yeoh and Jeff Goldblum, the Wizard of Oz, are like, this is great. This is exactly what we wanted. They're like, yes, this is what we're looking for. We wanted to unpredictably give a fighting force aerial capability. We weren't planning on that, but this goes right into our plans.
What a happy accident.
What a happy accident. And I just think that in the movie, Elphaba shows herself to be an incompetent wizard over and over and over, but the movie wants us to go, wow, she's the most powerful wizard of all time. But the only way that the movie makes us think that is by telling us, listen, she's the most powerful wizard of all time.
Right. They do the exact opposite of show, don't tell. They just tell and don't show.
They just tell. And I just think if you're gonna
hold on, can I finish it off?
Yes, please.
Are you done with the plot?
Well, I just want to say one last thing, which is that if you're gonna have a magic system if you're gonna have magic in your movie, in your story, you've got to figure out a little bit about how it works. And as it stands, Wicked does not have the artistic integrity of a Brandon Sanderson novel, and that, my friends, is an extremely low bar.
Well done. But I feel like you missed. I feel like you could have had a better landing. Now that very end was wonderful, but there's one part to me that you were leading up to and didn't mention, which is after failing to attempt to cast a levitation spell, she throws off her, throws off the cloak or whatever, gets onto a broom, and then flies.
And not only flies, Joe,
but levitates.
Flies like a fucking stealth bomber.
Yes.
Like she's been flying for 25 years of flight experience.
Hovers.
Like more flight skill than Superman all of a sudden.
Literally hovering right outside the tower, belting, singing top of her lungs, you're not going to hold me back anymore. Meanwhile, all they've done has been like, you're the greatest ever. You're the greatest ever. Your potential is unmatched. And she's like, I'm tired of listening to you. Hold me down. And she starts flying, and she couldn't cast a levitate spell a minute ago.
Yeah,
yes, very interesting. Very provocative.
No one gave a shit about the magic. Like, they were like, it's about her being held down. And I'm like, yeah, but the magic needs to make a little sense.
Yeah.
It needs to make a little sense.
We like understandable and cohesive magic system. We like rules around here at Glass Cannon Radio.
That's
and
right.
We like to make sure that you follow them. That's going to wrap it up for this week. Man,
was she even using a manipulate action? I
don't know. Did she provoke an AOO from the monkeys? Do they have a reactive strike?
Wicked. I don't know.
To everyone, every single one of you watching us here on Twitch, listening on the podcast, and especially those that are in Discord that came up and put their voice to the show today, called in. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. We can't wait to be back next week. More to discuss podcast next week. We'll do a little bit of Lynchian stuff and more things to come as well. So we have great ideas for this show. We can't wait to see it develop and evolve over time. I think it's going to be a really fun journey.
Thanks for your calls. So many great points and great, different angles and everything we were talking about. We'll see you next week. Thank you, guys.
We'll see you next time, everybody. Bye. Dance us out.